Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Uh, this is Rama from Bloqcube, and I'm delighted and honored that to present the story of a decentralized clinical trial system in the world of decentralized trials today. I know it's been a long day for you, but I appreciate your listening in, tuning in. And so, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you as you go ahead. Uh, what I plan to do is to share with you a little bit about our journey from a Bloqcube perspective on decentralized trials, and from there do a quick demo, and then of course always open for questions. Uh, Basically, the world has really changed today, as all of you can see. There's a greater need for remote patient-centric trials. But very frankly, this was there also before because, there was a data point that suggested that 4 to 8% of cancer patients only participated in trials. Having said that, there's been an increased need for telemedicine and patient centricity because of the revised regulatory guidelines. And integrating legacy systems with modern technologies is never an easy job, let alone doing real-time assessments. And source data verification costs are very expensive when you do a clinical trial. And not just that, there is also inherent tension between provider of service and the owner of the service because of delayed payments. And now we have a new virus also, which is the ransomware attacks. So we look at all these systems and say, what do we do? The Wikipedia had some very interesting stats, which talked about almost 90% of trials were suspended due to COVID. And there were some who even expected that the impact on the clinical trial research was set back by several years. And this is not surprising because, most of the communities in the medical field were so focused either on vaccines, vaccine trials, or saving lives that this was to be expected. And historically, there have been disadvantaged communities all over the world that have been underrepresented in clinical trials. And this really came to the fore when there was a mismatch between some of the vaccine trials in the US and some of the diversity that was taking place in the people who were falling ill because of COVID-19 and also because of the fatalities that it was causing. And in addition, what always runs through is that when a clinical trial takes place, there are data points that suggest that 41% of sites drop out due to payment delays. This is basically the story of decentralized clinical trials and the role of distributed ledger technologies and the Bloqcube story over here. In today's world, the clinical trial processes have been known to be inefficient. Having said that, the COVID situation has accelerated the spotlight and the challenges that the pandemic has presented in the execution of clinical trials. But there always and already was a challenge in terms of how many patients were participating in clinical trials. There was a need for the pandemic has created for additional telemedicine and patient centricity. And there's always a challenge of integrating legacy systems and modern technologies. Source data verification costs expensive. The FDA certification, guidelines, etc. is a critical part. And there have been issues due to delayed payments. And now we've got another virus, which is the ransomware attacks have really increased, making our world a lot more complex moving along. So decentralized trials have come up, and the Decentralized Trials Association is a great step in that direction. Because if you take a look at what data was suggested, almost 90% of trials were suspended due to COVID. And it is to be expected that the impact of the pandemic has set back clinical trial research several years. Disadvantaged communities were generally underrepresented, and now the FDA has brought out more guidelines to influence the choice. There was a critical situation last year when a vaccine trial was taking place by a leading company, and they found a mismatch between the patients who were or study subjects who were signing up for the trial and the statistics in the hospital of people who were affected or afflicted by the virus. And at the end of the day, late payments hurts everyone, and 41% of sites really drop out because of payment delays. So Bloqcube is one of the options and one of the pioneers in the application of a blockchain-based engine for doing a clinical trial. If you look at the vast majority of current systems, they are oriented towards doing it in a site where there's a web-based structure, web-based software, and that data goes into whatever the sponsor's software, data lakes or data warehouse. And the future, we think, is when we move an iPad and take it at a patient's house, where everything comes together, whether it's the trial drug, the diagnostics, other inputs, to do fully decentralized patient-centric remote trials. To give an example of this, the focus that we have applied in Bloqcube is to look at the execution piece, where there's the site monitoring cost, source data verification, and payments to site. All these administrative costs account to almost 26% of a trial. And if you look at the $100 billion spent by the industry, that's a huge amount of money. The pain points that we are trying to solve over here is the fact that there are multiple intermediaries, which adds on to costs. The fact that they are a siloed system, which creates multiple points of failure and makes it even more difficult to do a decentralized trial. The fact that there have been data integrity issues, because poor data integrity really causes a reputational hit, and the delayed access to data. As we start going to more and more decentralized systems and to patient homes, we need to be sure that we're getting transparency. We need to get high quality of data and get it rapidly. And of course, we've talked about the situation here. So let me demonstrate for you how our system works in this area. So this is Bloqcube. This is our system. We've got an electronic informed consent over here. And the reason why we built this up the way we have is that one is in FDA audits, the third or fourth largest objection comes up in the quality of the informed consent that takes place. So our informed consent stays in the blockchain, so it's immutable. But even more, there is an audio approach, so that if you have a study subject who natural language isn't that of the sponsor, there's a way to translate it and record that asset. And that way, ensure there's fully informed consent of people participating in the trial. Apart from that, there's the standard recording that takes place of the patient or the study subject and the physician who's taking it. And this is basically then anchored with one-time passwords to be sure that the right person is actually participating in it. Like others, we've got the electronic data capture, and this gives really end-to-end transparency, both of the site coming together process as well as how the patient is coming together. And of course, we can basically anonymize, randomize all the people that is there. The complete medical history can be taken, recorded, and we have the capacity also to capture the discussion related to the ECGs, etc., or the imaging. And unlike most systems, we've got an integrated financial module that compares budget to actual as we're going along. That is devolves down into its accounting features, which can be exported to any accounting system. At the same time, the financial planning also brought together with budget and actuals. We captured the credentials, the trial master forms electronically, have a detailed audit trail, which is the beauty of a distributed ledger system, and even more, have a user configurable dashboard, which allows you to really see what is happening in real time. And you can see over here, when we were testing out our system, this was our repeated test that we do. One is we simulated, this is a simulation completely, we simulated how a safety event would be recorded, and that happened instantaneously We recorded also geotagged wise where the data was coming. And you can see the CTO was in Michigan, I'm in New Jersey, and our team was in India in two different locations because of COVID, and they were testing it out. And immediately the patient records are coming up, the diversity profile as well as the age profile was coming up automatically. And this is, I think, the beauty of a distributed ledger system because the nodes are updating the information. And as you can see over here, we did this in a rural study, which I'll talk about in a minute. And given that we've got a distributed ledger engine, it allows us to be fully decentralized moving forward. So, coming back to the presentation, um, the the current system, while it is not ineffective, may not be appropriate for the future. And if you want to have a fully decentralized clinical trial, you will also need a fully decentralized clinical trial system, which is what we have built over here. So if you look at the current systems, very often samples are collected at site, then they're shipped out to whichever the lab is. Almost 30% data suggests 26 to 30% are still web and Excel based, or they're web based electronic data capture platform, with some notable exceptions. The investigational medical products are administered at the site. The checks are taking place by the staff at the site. Consent tends to be paper driven, and the follow up is done by site visits. Now, imagine there is a cancer patient or a COPD patient sitting in rural anywhere. But let's say in rural America, it gets even more difficult for the person to come across to the clinic. And the beauty of a decentralized system is the samples can be collected through a concierge and sent off to a local lab. The patient diaries can be put as part of an ECRF, ECO, COA, or ePro. The investigational medical product is can be built up in terms of tracking and tracing with a blockchain based system so that we know at all times what is happening to the product. And Bloqcube is already building up a POC that is going to be demonstrating to customers who want it to integrate all these modules into it. Then there's the question of clinical checks, which is done in this remote wise. Monitoring gets done, e-consent gets done, Zoom and telemedicine gets done, and we've automated the financial payments. So we will be moving towards integrating IoT and wearables into our system, but that makes it a fully decentralized system which can allow the complete work to take place at a patient's home. So value proposition is, as you can see, we are an e-clinical software solution. We are targeting life science mid-size companies. We believe we can accelerate trials and revenues because if your accounting is clear and the work activity is clear, you can bill your client immediately. And then we can deliver real-time data transparently, which is less vulnerable to ransomware attacks. And we've done this by putting in a cloud-based iPad-based solution running on a distributed ledger technology. And in our case, we've chosen Hyperledger Fabric for the first phase of our product rollout. So the question that comes up very often is, well, how does this look vis-a-vis, competitors? And the competitors are really, really huge and they're outstanding companies. And that's really a challenge for a startup entrepreneur like us. Having said that, in addition to what they do, we believe we are firstly a fully decentralized system. We are amongst the pioneers who are in a clinical trial software in this. We are already ready to roll out CBDC with our payment modules. And we have integrated finance completely so that it not only does it help the vendor, but also the user of the services in faster reconciliation and lesser costs because of it. We tested this in a very difficult situation in rural India. You can see the sort of people who are using the iPad for the first time. You can see the signatures that they are taking. And there was supposed to be 850 patients in 12 months, according to how they were doing the study. They gave us 150 patients, and we did that in 12 days. And even accounting for the time it takes to build the software, the saving was almost, more than 50%. We then tested it again last year in a community health screening camp. And here we had 8 iPads, 65 patients, and we did that in 6 hours, which for the people organizing the clinic and the camp, they were very happy about it because they could see what was happening in real time. And we also have HIT Labs of New York, which is a part of Columbia Business School, who has virtually certified the system. So they really kicked the tires and used the system and showed that it worked. We are moving forward in terms of our customers. We've got MOU signed with three. We are planning out the last stages of a commercial discussion with a large client for a phase 4 study in bone metastasis studies with about 5 to 15 sites. And that will be almost a 2 year study. So we are getting the traction that we want. And we are also discussing a patient registry for a rare disease with another large client. And the reason why we can get all this thing done is because we've got an outstanding team which has got deep domain expertise, operational expertise. And so we're not technologists, as very many can be with a super solution and looking for a problem. We are deep domain experts, very seasoned, who know where the issues are. And because of that, have come out with solutions that can handle it. And why do we think we should be your potential partner of choice? Because we really offer something for all the key stakeholders. And we are looking at integrated platform or unified platforms from that perspective. I talked about the virtual certification. We are also one of the very, very few companies, and the only one in the clinical trial software space, to my knowledge, that has been recognized by Gartner's Hype Cycle report for life science and commercial operations. And this is how, in these two pilots, data looked. We geotagged it, we gave a diversity profile, there was a disease situation, SAE events, you name it, we built it into the structure. And the features are pretty significant, because we have built it on a distributed ledger. So that allows governance, data integrity, and speed. We also have very sound and robust data import capabilities. The dashboard is customizable. It goes without saying that we are fully compliant with FDA's guidelines and computer system validations. And for now, we worked with an iPad. We've also got a phone capability right now, and we'll move towards an Android later. And then we will be integrating other IoT devices in order to see that the remote monitoring can also be remote continuous monitoring if needed by the study. And this is how the landscape looks like of clinical trial software systems, where people are moving to unified platforms. And we basically do almost all these except for the data management. And we are about to roll out the POC for a blockchain-based track and trace clinical trial IM supply chain management system. Here's how some of the large leaders in the industry have felt that the beauty that, or let's say there is always a sun behind the clouds. And what has happened is that the pandemic, though it has been very stressful for everybody, it has also provided a catalyst to the industry, in the words of Spade and Howell from Parexel. And this is likely to be permanent, and we are there poised to help you meet those needs. Some great experts' testimonials over here on it. And what we are really asking in this whole process is to request you to accelerate your trial by piloting with us. We've built a pioneers program with very attractive incentives. And our plan is basically that we convince the return on investment and the return on value that you get by using an agile system from entrepreneurs like us. We've been recognized by leading accelerators. I just graduated from the plug and play Silicon Valley, where they looked at 100 health tech companies in the world and chose 20 to pitch, and then chose 10 in for Silicon Valley's in a box program. And we are one of the 3 clinical trial software companies that they chose for this accelerator program out of the 20 finally that ended up. We are partners, we are pretty strong. And what we're really trying to do over here is not to build a faster horse, but we wanted to be modernizing the way the life science industry does clinical trials by leveraging our deep domain experience and outstanding, fully decentralized clinical trial software system, a very seasoned board of advisors for accelerating clinical trials in the decentralized environment. The decentralized environment through the DTRA is giving us an opportunity to speed up uh, clinical trials with appropriate governance measure. And just like a patient may order, or a study subject or one of us would order, let us say, a travel ticket home, or food, or a pizza, or Uber, hopefully our softwares will all come together as an industry to make the impossible happen. Thank you.